wasn't me.
All right. I think that's Shaggy. Pretty sure that's Shaggy. It wasn't me. That was Shaggy. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. TLC and Shaggy at the grandstand tonight. So definitely, if you haven't gotten tickets, maybe there's some available. We shall see. But looking forward to seeing the crowds out there. As we broadcast live from the Illinois State Fair all week long, we've got a cavalcade of guests coming up, including after 7 o'clock, Comptroller Susana Mendoza. Then after 7:30, we'll talk with the Secretary of State candidate for the Democrats, Alexi Janulius, and also we'll delve into the issue of dairy. It being, of course, a agriculture expo for the Illinois State Fair. It's important that we hear from various players in the ag space. But yesterday was a busy day. I was here at the fairgrounds in the morning, rushed over to monitor some happenings off-site, and then went to the Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin's roundtable discussion about the impacts on pharmaceutical drugs and pharmacies from the Inflation Reduction Act. And they took a few questions from members of the media about the Inflation Reduction Act and the various ways that they say it's going to help individuals, especially senior citizens, and their access to affordable medications, including insulin, capping insulin costs, I think to like $35 or something like that, but for only those who are on Medicare. So this is obviously a big piece of legislation that was signed by President Joe Biden, and it's an omnibus package that Senator Dick Durbin actually referenced late Senator Byrd in saying that they're just following his lead on using parliamentary procedures to lump all of these things together instead of doing it piecemeal and trying to get bipartisan support for various aspects of this legislation. Instead, they lumped it all together, and it turned into a very partisan bill that's going to spend somewhere around $730 billion from tax increases on large corporations and apparently on those who make more than $400,000, and we'll hear a little bit more of the concerns from the farming community about what that means. But I also took the opportunity in asking Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. Now here we are, a week and a half after the raid on former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate down in Florida, where it's been making headlines nationally. And a lot of concerns about the trust in the Department of Justice and in the FBI. And this is something that you've got a history, even just recently, of FBI agents, in particular the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. That plot in documents and testimony that's coming out of court cases in that indicates very much that the FBI orchestrated that particular plot and the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. And then you go even further back, even here in Springfield. If you recall, this was one of the first FOIA requests I ever filed, and it dealt with an individual who was in prison at a time, came out a converted Muslim, and then he was later arrested for placing a device outside of the federal court building in downtown Springfield. Some of you may remember that. Michael Fenton was his name. Talib Islam was his name that he changed to. He said that I need to FOIA his FBI file because he claimed that he was approached to be an informant. And he refused, and ultimately he said that he was harassed by law enforcement, and ultimately he said he had no choice but to go along with the FBI's plans that they had laid out for him, that he was later arrested for and is now serving prison time for. And when I FOIA'd the FBI with Michael Fenton's permission, he had to sign off on forms from a prison cell that he was in back in, I think, Texas. But ultimately, with Fenton's permission, I FOIA'd and got the record and showed that indeed the FBI approached Michael Fenton to be an informant. And it was rather revealing to see that on paper. But that's just a string of different types of instances where some people say that this is not how the FBI should be conducting themselves. They should be investigating things. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, not conducting intelligence type of operations, clandestine operations, orchestrating events behind the scenes. So there's some substantial questions, even in the past 5 years, of the FBI, in particular, with the Trump-Russia collusion investigations, the warrants that were issued against Carter Page when Trump was a candidate, and allowed for the Trump campaign to be monitored, essentially, and to have their communications monitored before he was president, and then several months into being president. If you recall, Trump said that he was being spied on, and that sparked a whole bunch of headlines right when he got into office. So there are some legitimate questions that many Americans have about why they should trust the Department of Justice and the FBI, considering what we've seen happen, at least to targeted investigations against the former president, and now culminating in the former president's home being raided and boxes of documents being taken, and then leaked reports to media about what those documents may pertain to. So I asked Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth yesterday how they plan on restoring trust in the FBI and the Department of Justice for many Americans who feel that they've lost trust in the FBI. And here's Senator Durbin and Tammy Duckworth's response to that question.
No senator is above the law, no member of the House, no former president is above the law. To a judge who issued it, the search took place with the president's lawyer on the premises, videotaped. There was an inventory of all the things taken from his house given to him. It is not part of the official record. I don't know if it's going to lead to any prosecution, but if he had classified information that should not have been in his possession, that was wrong. You ought to see what we go through to see those documents. We walk into a room and the first thing they want you to do is take out all your cell phones. You can't bring a cell phone in
your Apple Watches.
Your Apple Watches. Now you go through the room and they say, if you take notes, you can't take them out of the room. That's how serious they are about us looking at documents in the categories that were taken out of the former president's residence. This was important information, classified information, and he should have treated it as such. Whether he did or not would be decided by a prosecutor.
With the recent history of the FBI, everything from the...
Then I asked the question of the recent stories, the FBI, and the Whitmer case, and also an FBI lawyer who pleaded guilty to altering documents in the Trump investigation. How are you going to restore trust?
Former President Trump, how do you regain the trust of...
I can tell you the bottom line is this. They are answerable to the public through the Senate Judiciary Committee. The director of the FBI was before weeks ago answering questions, and more will be given to him. They've got to be held accountable, that's for certain. Everyone does, members of the Senate and the House included. But the bottom line is whether or not they've had one or two problems in the past should not absolve anybody, including the former president, from scrutiny if there is any serious belief that he might have violated the law. He is not above the law. He'll never be above the law, and I don't think he'll ever be convinced of that.
And not to mention the fact that the FBI director was appointed by President Trump.
Is there reason to believe this situation has posed an actual threat to national security?
I don't know the answer to that. The affidavit supporting the search warrant has not been disclosed because I'm told at least the Department of Justice that was the name of the judge for credibility, that if they're disclosed publicly, there are people who are being threatened to be killed because they're in the eye. I mean, I was outraged, and everybody should, that demonstrators outside of the home of the Supreme Court Justice within the last several weeks, including one who said he was there to kill him. That's an outrage. That's terrible. Violence is never acceptable. Now the same thing is being done to FBI agents, and the people who were so outraged before are very quiet. We can't accept a system of justice in this country where if you're a law enforcement agent, your life is at stake every moment for political reasons. That is unacceptable.
And again, that's Senator Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth responding to questions I had. You also heard a question there from WMAY's Jim Leach about whether or not the documents pose a national security threat. So I imagine you're going to hear a lot more about this. And Durbin being on a committee that oversees the FBI and the Department of Justice, hopefully he does delve into some of these important questions. And I know a lot of the Republicans in Congress have similar types of questions about how to restore faith in the Department of Justice and the FBI. For many Americans out there who have seen the events of the past 5 years or so as problematic, and questions about the possible weaponization of the Department of Justice. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News.